KPMG. Simon, welcome to you again. Progress on shipping emissions. Why is this important? What has happened?
We had a press release yesterday by the International Chamber of Shipping, WWF and Oxfam, and what came out of that press release was an indication that the International Chamber of Shipping was willing, in principle, for some money or any money raised out of a mechanism to control shipping emissions ought in part to go to the Green Climate Fund. And I think that's a very strong message to send to people and organisations who are thinking of maybe contributing to this fund, that is sort of becoming a reality, at least that's in principle.
Are they doing this with love in their heart, or do they have to do it?
The IMO really has been charged with trying to control greenhouse gas emissions from shipping for quite a number of years, and it's been making very steady progress. Not as fast as some people would hope, but progress nevertheless.
So what exactly is on the table then?
What's on the table? We're looking at a range of options to control greenhouse gases from shipping. One of them is a levy, another one may be a market-based mechanism. But whether it be a levy or whether it be a market-based mechanism, that will generate significant volumes of money, and that money has to be reinvested in some way, shape or form, and part of that money will hopefully be going into a Green Climate Fund should an agreement become available here.
Are greenhouse gas emissions from shipping a huge problem?
It accounts for around about 3% of global emissions, which sounds quite small, but in reality it's equivalent to something like the size of Germany. So in total it's quite a lot. I think what's more important is that over the next 10-20 years it's predicted to increase quite significantly. So unless action is taken now, then the sector will become a much greater contributor.
All very well to announce this, but how difficult is it to regulate and to administer?
I think that's where the devil's going to be, is in the detail. It's a very clear policy indication that this is something which they will consider. I think the IMO is doing tremendous work in moving this forward. The European Commission is also thinking about regulating greenhouse gas emissions from shipping. So there's, if you like, a parallel track. We're not there yet, and it could take another 5 to 6 years before we see anything in terms of hard policy, but at least the message is taking us in the right direction.
Right, okay, tick the shipping box. What about planes and cars?
Slightly different matter.
Yeah.
The international body responsible for aiming to control greenhouse gases from aviation hasn't moved as quickly as the IMO. The European Commission has done so, and it's bringing...
They're bigger culprits, aren't they?
Slightly less, but again predicted to grow quite significantly over the coming years. So it's all about burden sharing, and I think that's part of what we're about here, is saying, well, you are a sector, you are a relatively small contributor in total, but there is a burden needs to be shared, and responsibility needs to come back to you as an organisation. The European Commission has regulated to bring aviation into EU ETS. And that is causing quite a lot of concern and consideration within the international aviation sector, which is, it's in pretty difficult times at the moment. And hopefully what's happening with shipping is that it's taking a more proactive approach and trying to avoid those sort of policy.
So symbolically it's an important move. What does it say then, or what sort of message does it send out to other businesses? Not even necessarily in the transport sector.
I think it's saying, look, there's a role for all sectors, all commercial organisations in the Green Climate Fund. I mean, I was listening into the negotiations early on today, and I must confess I was taking a more positive spin out of it. A lot of the delegates were reporting very strong support that something should be in place quicker rather than later. And I think one of the stronger messages coming out from me was that whilst it's not a perfect deal, the Transitional Committee report isn't perfect in all aspects. Parties were prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt and move towards getting some resolution, hopefully this week, the week and a half coming, to take us through.
Is that how you really see it? I mean, to use this horrible word that's floating about the corridors here, operationalised. Do you really think it will be at the end of COP17? A lot saying, well, perhaps we shouldn't have that greater expectation. Maybe some of it will be deferred to COP18 in Qatar.
I think there's a very well sort of understood principle in climate change negotiations that the longer you put something off, the more difficult it is going to become to achieve it, and the more expensive it's going to become to achieve it. So, if you're taking pure economic principles, much better to act now and act early, and you develop it as an evolutionary process. I think what was quite exciting from certainly the conversations I was listening to was this understanding that perhaps we don't need to get to a position of perfect policy.
Yeah.
That policy is an evolutionary process. Let's put this in place and build upon it.
Interesting, the Japanese delegation having an interesting phrase for that today, calling it a landing zone, perhaps a starting block, which is a good thing. We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Simon Davies with us from the consulting firm KPMG. We will have more from COP17 here in Durban tomorrow. Good night to you from Jeremy Max.